Persad-Bissessar, joined with the other leaders of the coalition grouping that comprises the People's Partnership, to renew my pledge to you, to acknowledge the impatience with which for decades you have waited. You have waited for basic needs which are now only being met. Needs such as for water, for schools, police stations, healthcare, or simply the idea that leaders will be held accountable to a higher standard than ever before. I pledge to acknowledge the times when we falter and to renew our commitment to grow from these experiences and to introduce new ideas from fresh talent drawn from those of you who are ready to serve our nation. With these new resources and energy, I pledge to keep the flame of our nation's renewal burning bright in our hearts and minds. The dream we gave birth to in 2010.
Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar there at the People's Partnership anniversary celebrations on Sunday. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We apologize for not being able to air this show on Sunday night as normal. Of course, contractual obligations trump everything else. I'm Jabari Fraser. This is A Current Affair. Remember, you can send us your comments and suggestions on Twitter at TV6TNT or at Jabari Fraser. Don't forget to use the hashtag A Current Affair. Give us some feedback on Facebook too. CCN TV News is the name of our page. Believe it or not, the People's Partnership government has been in power for 5 years as of Sunday. The election programming was warming up as votes were being counted to put the first female prime minister in power. Has the People's Partnership government made a significant impact on governance and the country's well-being, or have the allegations of corruption, fired ministers, or the ever-mutating ghost of Section 34 taken control of everything else that the government has done? We are closer to the June 17th dissolution of Parliament. On set this evening are Dane Francois of the ILP, Mr. David Abdulah of the MSJ, and Mr. Gary Griffith of the Alliance of Independence. Gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Now, we heard the Prime Minister at the top of the show there talking about a few different things. She said that she will ensure more accountable government and acknowledge when the government falters. Mr. Abdulah, maybe I'll start with you. Do you believe that, given the track record of the last 5 years?
Not at all. It was all, statements about making people feel good. But the reality is that this is a government that is perceived to be the most corrupt ever, engaged in the most amount of nepotism, discrimination, all of the things that people have been complaining about over the last 5 years, which is why the MSJ left. So no, I don't believe that whatsoever. And that pledge, there was a bit of a joke there. She asked the leaders to come on stage. I don't think Mr. McLeod leads any organization.
So, are you sure that's not just MSJ internal sour grapes?
No, the COP, as everyone knows, Mr. Pani made the statement many years ago, the COP is but a corpse. The top is at the bottom of Tobago politics. And Jack has lost all pride and self-respect. So the partnership really has boiled down to the UNC. And it is led by Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, and everything else is just pure optics and illusion.
Mm-hmm. Before I continue, maybe I should just explain why the guests, three opposition guests, because we recorded this show on Sunday evening, and all of the People's Partnership powerful people were at the rally on Sunday, and of course none of them was available to come to the show. And the PNM also had their function on Sunday as well, so we couldn't get any of them. Mr. Francois, maybe you can tell me how the ILP feels about this, especially since there are corruption allegations, or have been corruption allegations over the ILP leaders' head for several years, and how can the ILP promise anything better than what the People's Partnership has offered?
Well, any political party at this time can offer better than what we've seen with this present administration. Jabari, corruption began with the screening of candidates in this People's Partnership government. You would recall that the real Attorney General, not the Attorney General who now assumes the office of the Attorney General, not Gavin Nicholas, I was speaking about Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, you would recall that he said that he was questioned during his screening process, and he was asked, if you unearth corruption, would you be as vociferous and as aggressive in dealing with it as you did in the Pandey regime? He said yes, and he was not selected. The very question, to me, suggests that this government, from its inception, was bent on misleading the nation. Jabari, words are like perfume. It would do good to the air, but just don't swallow it. I have here data, Jabari, from Sharon Otley, the Auditor General. 220 pages, a dissertation almost, of an audit of most of the state agencies. And anywhere you can close your eyes, including the Office of the Prime Minister, according to Sharon Otley, and you would find impropriety. So from top to bottom, in the People's Partnership, there are massive corruption. Yeah.
I want to bring Mr. Griffith into the conversation now. How do you feel about what the Prime Minister has pledged at the beginning of the manifesto promises now since the rally took place on Sunday?
Well, after just hearing my two comrades there, they were more dynamic and swinging than the Mumbai Baton lineup in the IPL final. The Alliance of Independence, I think what is very good, however, that the three of us are here, and the reason I say that is that we represent what you call the undecideds, that third force, the third constituency, those persons that are not a UNC till are dead or are born a PNM and will die a PNM. And the Alliance of Independence, we certainly don't have an issue with that. It is your right if you want to be a loyalist, yellow or red, until you die. But do not disregard the impact and the importance of the third force. I think what happened with the People's Partnership government, I don't think anybody will get into government deliberately to be corrupt or to be incompetent or ineffective. I think there was a lot that was planned. There was a direction. And because of the Congress of the People being that third force, it allowed the 150,000 floating voters to see that, listen, I could give the UNC government a chance because the COP will be there as the moral compass to put the checks and balances in place, and the MSG as well. And what happened is that because the UNC had 21 seats, they totally sidelined that moral compass. And because of that, they then lost their way. And now we have seen that Minister Prakash Ramada is more UNC than the UNC.
Talking about Minister Prakash Ramada, right now I just want to play a quick soundbite of something that he said on Sunday relating to third parties. Let's hear what he had to say.
We know that we must have a different equation, a new governance structure that will earn the respect of all of our brothers and sisters who are now of the view that they cannot decide. But I say on election day, there will be a decision. Whether you participate or you do not participate, if you are not for the People's Partnership, then you are for the PNM.
Gentlemen for the PNM? Yeah?
Well. That shows the arrogance of what we have now seen in the People's Partnership. Not the People's Partnership, but the Congress of the People. What Minister Ramada has just said is that if it is that you are not with us, you're a PNM. Now, if the PNM decides to say the same thing, how could we be PNM and UNC at the same time? It shows that Minister Ramada, who is the person who destroyed the legitimacy of the Congress of the People by agreeing to the runoff. The runoff was used as the ideal tool to destroy the third constituency of voters. And now he has reached a point to have the audacity and the arrogance to tell the 150,000 floating voters, independent parties, whether it is ILP, MSJ, NAR, DPTT, the AOI, independent candidates, that if it is you're not a part of us, well, then you are the enemy and you are the PNM. That is why the COP has moved from 147,000 votes in 2007 to their Aruka meeting where they had 38 people attend their national meeting. And that is why it is that there's a void right now, and the parties such as the individuals here, we are here to represent those individuals who are looking for a political vehicle.
But Mr. Abdulah, we have a situation now where the COP has clearly been diminished compared to what it was previously in 2010 and in the lead up to that election. But with so many separate third parties, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, how can those really be a part of anything that's serious or contribute in any way to not splitting the vote?
Well, people have to recognize that everyone has the right to choose. And therefore, whether or not votes are split, people have the right to contest an election and to choose. And so the issue to me and to the MSJ is not simply about this election, but also about the fact that our institutions are broken. The institutions of state have collapsed. Integrity Commission collapsed. The judiciary has collapsed in terms of the delivery of justice or the failure to deliver justice. The Parliament has become a collapsed institution, and so on and so on. And in that situation, what we really need to recognize is that unless we change the institutions through major reform, then what we call going to the Second Republic, we will have an election and it will not resolve
Talking
the
about
fundamental
more
issues.
accountability in Parliament, or the Parliament collapsed. The Prime Minister said on Sunday that the Parliament is now more accountable because of the fact that there is Prime Minister question time and it's urgent and so on. Do you think that is actually effective?
No, those are just elements or aspects. When you look at what is being debated in Parliament, look what happened with the issue with Vanilla Toppin-Allen. Look at the suspension of the leader of the opposition, the use of the parliamentary majority to suspend a member of the opposition in clear contravention of all of the processes of democracy, rule of law, constitution, everything like that. No, the Parliament has been misused. And those other things are merely the optics and illusion of a democratic process.
Mm-hmm. Now we go for a quick break. This is A Current Affair.
Hi, I'm Keishan Haynes, host of In Conclusion, your Week in Review show. Now, if there's anything you want us to cover during the week, make sure you write to us on Facebook or Twitter, but use the hashtag In Conclusion. And remember to check out the show Saturday nights at 7:30, right after the TV6 News.
Welcome back. This is A Current Affair. I want to continue this discussion with Mr. Francois now. The opposition leader said on Sunday that he would like to have CARICOM observers come in to ensure that everything goes smoothly with the election and ensure that there's no interference at the Elections and Boundaries Commission. Do you think that's necessary?
Absolutely, and I think what is equally important, as my colleagues were discussing outside a while ago, is that we need to ensure that votes aren't bought. And I do not know how CARICOM observers can determine that.
Do you think that's not just an alarmist opposition position?
Absolutely not. As someone who is on the ground in Sangre Grande, there's a method, a very systematic method that has been employed right now by the People's Partnership to buy votes. There's also this talk about a voting machine that has disappeared, and I don't know if it's simply rumor, but it's something that we definitely need to look into. I'm very concerned. The LP is particularly concerned about the economic ability of the People's Partnership and the manner in which the resources is being spent for this election. Very, very concerned. And in impoverished communities like Toko, Sangre Grande, this election machinery can in fact work.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Griffith, the Prime Minister said on Sunday as well that that 90% of the manifesto promises of 2010 have been accomplished. Do you think that's something that should be boasted about when there are so many other allegations of corruption and interference at the Integrity Commission and what have you floating about?
Well, no, obviously, I think it is the right of the government to obviously boast about their achievements, and that is what she did as the Prime Minister. If it is really 90% yes or no, that remains to be seen. I know it depended. Based on national security, there were many things that the ball has been dropped. We have seen the implementation of the long range patrol vessels, but there are many critical initiatives that have been shelved since my departure. It seems that the new Minister of National Security, he really doesn't have a clue what is going on. We've had the UAVs.
He was once your boss, you know.
Yeah, he was, and it is really disappointing that every single national security policy has now been shelved. The last 3 months.
And why is that?
Nothing.
Do you think that's because of the current minister?
I think it has to do with the political will and being able to understand national security. If it is you have a Minister of National Security, 1.3 million people in the country, and he was the last person to know about the day of total policing. You have to have the political will and to have that need to drive forward and get policies in place. The AOI representative in national security happens to be myself. The last full year of the UNC government, the number of serious crimes was reduced is the largest in over 31 years. Every serious crime by 25 to 83%.
Even so, even while you're Minister of National Security and you have these reductions in serious crime, there were several outstanding things that people wanted to know about. Prime example is the Dina Sital murder.
Exactly. And the reason for there are many things that were supposed to be approved, and as soon as in my department it involved the Commissioner of Police, Bill Bratton, his company come in here to do an audit of the police service, different companies from the United Kingdom, and different type of technology to improve policing. You can't just blame the police service if they do not do their job. It is the responsibility of the government to provide the logistic and the technical support so that they can perform, and that was on the verge of being done, but now everything has now been shelved.
Mr. Abdulah, you were talking about the Integrity Commission a little earlier and the trouble that the Commission has had. Do you think that there is widespread alleged interference in various independent state bodies?
Well, I certainly think that this government has attempted it. You will see, for example, the attack on the Office of the the Director of Public Prosecutions.
But doesn't the Attorney General have the right to express his opinion?
It's one thing to express an opinion, but it is another thing to lead an attack in that kind of way, to talk about the Deputy DPP being biased. There were strong political statements attacking that office. So one could say we think that the statement perhaps is improper, but to go to that length is clearly an attack on the independent institution of the DPP. That's just one example. And the Prime Minister talked about 90% of the manifesto. In the manifesto was a Faizabad declaration. In that it said that the partnership will not politicize state boards and the public service. That has been violated. That we not engage in discrimination, in corruption, that persons would not use their public office for the benefit of family, friends, etc., etc. All those things were violated.
Do you think that the MSG was naive in believing that in the first place?
I think, no, we wanted to get those things in together with the COP. I think that the balance, not just of the 21 seats, which Gary referred to, but I also think that the fact that the two leaders of those parties at the time, Errol MacLeod and Winston Ducran, they failed to stand up to the UNC in the early period. I could give a very simple example. I proposed at the meeting of leaders on this Thursday evening after the elections that there be a transition team to go through issues of appointment to state boards. Prime Minister said no. Not one of the other gentlemen there supported me on that question.
Why do you think that they were so soft to put their position and the people they represent up forward and make their points known?
That really has to be asked of them. But clearly they've failed to stand up, and they remained in office for the entire 5 years in spite of all of the nonsense that's gone on. So quite clearly, they did not have the courage of their convictions, assuming they had convictions in the first place.
Is that something you agree with, Mr. Griffith?
Definitely, yeah. But what happens again, I've been in cabinet, I've seen it. It is unfortunate where many of the cabinet ministers, they are afraid to come forward and really tell the Prime Minister what they feel. It's like sometimes you feel like, those trained seals that just clap when they get the ball. I told the Prime Minister, even as National Security Advisor, my job is not here to tell you what you need to hear, but what you need to know. And many times she will be upset, but 2 or 3 days later, she will then appreciate the fact of what I did. And that is exactly what David just said. They did not have the strength to say, Prime Minister, I think we should go another direction. She will say, I will give you a quick, she will say, let's have a retreat on Wednesday and come back Saturday. They all bang their table. She then changes her mind and say, let's do it Thursday. They said, okay, good plan, bang the table. I then say, well, Prime Minister, we need to have it longer. She said, less. They bang their table. Every single thing she says, they agree. And you can't run a government.
But how could you sit in the cabinet when that was happening? Wasn't that an affront to your
the little ball patch I'm getting here is because of that. I was pulling out here. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And many times it is, again, look at the live sport. I stood up against it. They banged their tables. What is right is right. What is wrong is wrong. The PCA director being removed. I could have easily had amnesia, and I will still be a minister. But I stood on principle, and I will and that is the same thing that David did. He left on principle. I was fired based on principle. And I think that is the one thing that is lacking right now in the People's Partnership government, that principle and that political will to just do what is right than rather the thing that you perceive to be politically correct.
Mr. Francois, what can the ILP offer in terms of ensuring and making that firm commitment to stand on principle, even when inside government, not only when you're trying to get into power and trying to win a seat here and there?
Yeah. One of the disadvantages of the People's Partnership government is that all of the board appointees are persons of the same political party, and that is the UNC. What I've seen in Mr. Warner is his ability to hew out the best. He isn't preoccupied, the ILP really isn't preoccupied with simply selecting persons because they are affiliated with the ILP. If we are to select the best persons... But
is that something that can be maintained after the election? Or is that just something that is being put up to possibly win seats?
Not at all. While in the UNC, there's so much testimonials how Mr. Warner extended beyond the narrow confines of the UNC and reached into the PNM and reached into other political parties for resources so as to make the country better. And the ILP is intent on finding the best persons, fielding the best persons, regardless of their political affiliation when we're in government. It makes no sense to appoint a Gavin Nicholas as your minister, as your attorney general. It makes no sense. He's very simple, juvenile. How can a body in the United States, the government that is, send correspondence to his office, which is a very sensitive piece of document, and instead of preserving the sanctity of the office, he simply hands it over to the Prime Minister, and it ends up on a platform that's juvenile.
Mr. Francois, we have to take a quick break. This is a current affair. Welcome back. Mr. Griffith wanted to make a quick point while we were off air.
Going back to the present Attorney General, the comment when he said that the Deputy DPP should have written directly to him, it shows that there's a problem with some of the ministers not understanding their role and responsibility. It goes.
Is it that they understand proper procedure?
Well, I don't know if it is that they didn't do their homework. If you recall, Minister Ramada also directed the PCA director to report to him. These are independent institutions, and what we are doing, we have affected the independent institution of the central authority. People are questioning how documents got across to government officials. The PCA office has now been affected. The DPP's office has been affected. We are telling the police service they must get their act together. The Integrity Commission has been affected. We are saying that Moody's, they don't know what they are speaking about. I ask that what we need to do is to back off and let the independent institutions be independent.
But if the independent institutions aren't functioning as they ought to, then surely they need a pulling up somewhere.
But it depends, of course, on when you define that they're not functioning in accordance with what there should be.
2 years to investigate the Emailgate matter seems to me as if nothing is functioning.
Well, no, I think we all agree that those investigations have taken way too long. But the very first call that was made by myself, for example, MSJ, and including the roundtable, was that the then Attorney General should have stepped aside. Because the central authority falls under the office of the Attorney General, the then Attorney General should have stepped aside or been asked to step down and so on, and then kick in the mutual legal assistance treaties, bring in top forensic IT persons from abroad who have no axe to grind in Trinidad and Tobago, who's not friend and family with anybody here, to have a thorough, quick investigation into the matter. If that had been done, this thing would have been over and done with a long time ago. But the government wanted to play politics with it. And this is where we have ended up, unfortunately. So
wasn't that just a desire to clear their name, as the Prime Minister says?
Well, no, but you see, there's more than one way you think you could clear your name. So if you wave something in Parliament and said, you remember, there's not once but twice now she said she's been cleared, and each time she said she's cleared, it's been found out that she's not been cleared. So all of that is just, trying to mislead the public about the real situation. And what has to happen with this Emailgate issue is that not only the form, Justice Venter was clear, not only the form, but the content. In other words, were any of the things that was stated in those documents, was there any truth in any of that whatsoever? Now, the country needs to know that one way or the other, and then the chips will fall where they fall at that time.
How do we know which word to take on? Because we have Justice Venter on one hand, and then we have the registrar of the Integrity Commission, which is a legitimate position, sending out a release, and then there's no real indication of which one to take on, especially since the chair is still in place, and up until when we're recording this.
Yes, but you've noticed that the chairman has not refuted what Justice Venter said. All the chairman said is, I did nothing wrong. But he did not say that what Justice Venter said was incorrect. And the president now has to step up to the plate. And the president had better do, according to him, the right thing, because it's the right thing to do, and not try to cover it up either.
Yeah, but do you not also find it awkward, Jabari, that the Prime Minister and the Attorney General is suggesting that the Deputy DPP be silent while she speaks? Is it not strange, that in the letter sent to the Prime Minister's attorney, there is a pronouncement of $250,000 or jail time if the commissioners do not keep silent? Do you not also find it awkward that Mr. Lalchan has refused to speak, but Justice Ventor is speaking?
Dr. Lalchan, yeah. What can these three very distinct political parties offer the national community as a means forward as we wrap up the program? How can you come together and actually make something solid, or would you come together at all?
Well, I know it's still early days. The ILP remains open to speaking, with just about anybody.
Including the partnership or including the UNC?
No. No, we can't. That is off the table. But in terms of nation building, Jabari, in terms of security and national security at that, the ILP has embarked on a legitimacy exercise where we are attempting to legitimize the police. In many communities, it is believed that the police is an illegitimate group by virtue of their relationship with the communities. Consider policemen being aggressive with the disabled. How do we legitimize the police? How do we create a sense of relationship between the two? And that's the path that the ILP is going. We're big on innovation and creativity, both the novel approach and the word is
escaping you.
Yes, it's escaping me. But yes, but there are two approaches to innovation, and we are bent on it, which is the total in innovation and the enhancing of a particular product.
Right. We just have about 60 seconds left. Gentlemen, I just want to get from you where you will carry your labor backing and where you will carry your independent middle class backing, which I assume you're targeting.
Well, very quickly, what MSJ is about is a revolution of the mind, to challenge the status quo, to say that we have to recognize that the current institutions have collapsed. We need a second republic. And we're going to be building a movement around justice issues to bring more and more people into a process of recognizing that if we don't get fundamental change instead of exchange, this country is going to continue to go from crisis to crisis.
Mr. Griffith, 15 seconds.
The Alliance of Independence, we are independent. We hold both major parties in very high regard, but what we think is that this time the minority of the political parties would be the priority. Unless any of those major political parties recognize the significance of these third constituency parties, they would end up in opposition. The COP is now a dead party, and we have now filled the void to ensure that we will be part of the next government.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. That's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us so late on a Sunday evening to record this show despite the problems that we had at the beginning. This is A Current Affair. Stay tuned. Remember, this show is rebroadcast on Tuesday morning at 9:30. Good night.